The chronic state of female dissatisfaction is a psychological reality that many men spend their entire lives trying to solve, only to realize that the problem is an internal mechanism their external efforts can never truly fix. It's not actually about the flowers, the money, the help with chores, or the long hours worked. It's a pre-existing condition, a corrosive program running since childhood that creates an inescapable state of global unhappiness, regardless of a woman's objective external circumstances. Until a man recognizes this unconscious dynamic, he will continue to try and fill a bottomless bucket, apologizing for faults that aren't his and slowly cling to a state of bewildered desperation. The core truth is that you can't make an unhappy woman happy, and her unhappiness is not your fault. The moment a man hears the phrase, "Nothing you do is ever good enough," he should understand that the criticism is not a feedback report on his actions, but a symptom of an internal reservoir of dissatisfaction in his partner. He brings the wrong color flowers, plans the wrong restaurant, helps with the housework the wrong way. If he works long hours to provide, he's absent. If he spends time at home, he's not ambitious enough. This total, global criticism of everything he is or isn't, says, thinks, or doesn't say, is the key that unlocks his freedom. It is not about him at all. The dissatisfaction is portable. It existed before he arrived, and it will persist long after he's gone. His attempts to solve it only serve to validate the premise that he is, in fact, the problem. The genesis of this chronic dissatisfaction is a multi-layered phenomenon, beginning with the deepest structural layer, genetics. Research has repeatedly shown that a significant portion of personality, including a predisposition toward optimism or pessimism, is hereditary. Some women are literally born with brain chemistry that predisposes them to focus on the negative, to see the glass perpetually half empty. Their default setting is complaint, their baseline is dissatisfaction, and their normal state is unhappy. This isn't a moral failing, it's a genetic predisposition, like having brown eyes or being left-handed. Without serious, often clinical, and conscious effort to rewire these patterns, a difficult and rare undertaking, they will remain perpetually dissatisfied, regardless of who they are with or what they possess. This genetic foundation is often tragically exacerbated by childhood programming, which typically follows one of two devastating paths, often intersecting and reinforcing each other. The first path involves a problematic relationship with the father. This could be due to his physical absence, emotional unavailability, or outright abuse. The daughter grows up with a deep, unconscious resentment of the masculine, an ingrained belief that men are fundamentally unreliable and will always disappoint her. To cope, she adopts a self-fulfilling prophecy. She will either choose disappointing men, thus validating her deep-seated belief, or, more subtly, she will be so impossible to please that even good men become disappointing in their futile attempts to meet her impossible, constantly moving standards. Her relationship with her partner is less a partnership and more a continuous, unconscious test of her father's failures. The second path is through maternal modeling. If the daughter observed her mother as chronically dissatisfied, constantly criticizing the father, and perpetually unhappy with what she had, the daughter absorbs this behavior as the normal female script. She learns that this is how women do relationships. The mother's complaints about money, chores, romance, ambition become the daughter's internal monologue. By the time she reaches adulthood, this destructive pattern feels profoundly familiar, and humans, in their unconscious state, will always choose the familiar over the truly happy. She finds herself saying the exact words her mother said, creating the same miserable, critical atmosphere, unconsciously recreating her mother's suffering because, deep down, chaos feels like home. The unhappiness is simply a learned behavior, a generational virus passed down through observation and immersion. When the internal programming is in place, the outside world merely provides fuel for the fire. The most potent accelerant is the expectations-reality gap. Modern women have been sold a potent, toxic fantasy of relationships and marriage. Fueled by Disney, romantic comedies, and the carefully curated highlight reels of social media, they enter a relationship expecting to be a queen, for life to be a constant, effortless stream of romance, adventure, diamonds, and perpetual, intense fulfillment. When reality hits, bills, chores, routine, the inevitable post-honeymoon dip, and the normal human flaws of a partner, the gap between the fantasy and the actual life becomes a bottomless source of pain and dissatisfaction. When this internal emptiness persists, despite having the external trappings of a good life, the woman begins to project her internal state onto her partner. The problem isn't the unfilled hole in her psyche. The problem is him. He's not romantic enough, not successful enough, or not enough of something to finally cure what is broken inside her. The target keeps moving because the dissatisfaction is not tied to the specifics of the man, but to the unrealistic expectation that an external force, especially a man, can cure an internal wound. This projection is intensely magnified by the poison of envy and comparison in the social media age. Every woman now has a constant, unsolicited window into the curated, filtered lives of thousands of other women. She sees her colleague's expensive anniversary trip, her sister's perfect home renovation, the friend's effortlessly slim post-baby body. Each post serves as evidence of her own life's inadequacy. She doesn't stop to consider the hidden costs, the friend's crippling debt, the marital counseling behind the Paris photo, or the careful lighting and editing. She just knows she doesn't have that life, and it must be someone's fault. The closest, most convenient, and most acceptable target for this displaced rage is her husband. This social pressure is further intensified by the have-it-all myth, a destructive cultural narrative that promises career, family, romance, and wealth in every area simultaneously. In reality, life necessitates trade-offs. Career success often means less family time. Financial security often means less adventure. But acknowledging a trade-off feels like failure or settling. So instead of accepting the natural limits of reality, women remain perpetually dissatisfied with whatever they choose, feeling like a failure no matter what they achieve, because there's always some other area in which they are not yet perfect. The highly successful career woman is miserable because she lacks a family. The stay-at-home mother is miserable because she lacks professional ambition. And the woman trying to do both is miserable because she is utterly exhausted and feels she is failing at everything. Finally, a devastating psychological law dictates that for many women, the moment something becomes theirs, it loses value in their eyes. This is the devaluation mechanism. When she was single, she desperately wanted a secure, stable man. She gets him, and now his stability becomes boring. His jokes that were charming become annoying. His persistent attention that was romantic becomes suffocating. Nothing changed except her internal perception. But she will never accept that the change is internal. She believes he changed, that he tricked her, or that he's not who she thought he was. The conquest is over, the chase is done, and the prize immediately becomes ordinary. This cycle ensures a continuous, self-sabotaging search for the next temporarily valuable conquest. Beyond external pressures, the chronic unhappiness is sustained by deep-seated issues of inauthenticity and immaturity that prevent genuine connection and emotional peace. Many women have been taught since childhood to wear a mask, to be whoever they need to be to secure a relationship. They present themselves as easygoing when they are high maintenance, as agreeable when they are secretly controlling, as sexual when they are frigid. They understand that their authentic self may not be chosen, so they engage in a sustained performance to secure the commitment. After the marriage is secured, the mask comes off, and she is angry. Angry having had to pretend for so long, and angrily resentful of him for not seeing through the performance. She is trapped in a life that is fundamentally inauthentic, and this relentless performance is exhausting. Exhaustion breeds deep resentment, which manifests as the chronic dissatisfaction directed at the man who was the target of the performance. She is unhappy because she is not being real, but she feels she can't be real because she believes her real self isn't good enough. This is a perpetual, self-made prison of resentment. This is often intertwined with an underlying immaturity factor. Many modern women enter relationships having no clear idea what they actually want, only what they are supposed to want according to Instagram, romantic comedies, and cultural scripts. They have failed to develop an independent sense of self, separate from external validation. They lack the boundaries to define where they end and others begin, absorbing everyone's emotions, problems, and expectations, and then feel overwhelmed and dissatisfied with a life that isn't even truly their own. They chose a partner, a lifestyle, and a path based on what would impress others, what looked good on social media, or what they thought they should want, rather than what they genuinely desired. The inevitable unhappiness that follows is the internal scream of an undeveloped self that was never given space to define its own values. Furthermore, a culture of feminist superiority has programmed many women to see themselves as queens, goddesses, and prizes to be won, deserving of everything, while men are often subconsciously regarded as inferior beings who exist primarily to serve, provide for, and worship them. This creates a devastating paradox. You cannot feel genuine connection or happiness in a relationship with someone you do not fundamentally respect. If she treats her partner like a servant who should be grateful for the opportunity to provide, the relationship becomes hollow and empty, yet she wonders why she's miserable. The deep-seated disrespect creates a psychological void that no amount of provision can fill. The deepest manifestation of this internal crisis is the paradox where women often seem to actively sabotage their own happiness. She says she wants stability, then creates chaos. She says she wants peace, then starts fights. She says she wants love, then pushes away affection. This is not conscious manipulation, it's unconscious programming playing out. The childhood wounds run so deep that the individual doesn't even recognize happiness when they experience it. Stability feels wrong, peace feels suspicious, and true happiness feels temporary and dangerous. They are so convinced that happiness is impossible that they make it impossible. Why not destroy the peace now, rather than wait for it to inevitably end? They are recreating the dysfunction they know because dysfunction feels like home. Moreover, for many women, unhappiness has become an identity. They bond with other women through shared complaining and grievance. They gain attention through being perceived as a victim of circumstances, fate, or most conveniently, their man. They avoid responsibility by blaming their dissatisfaction on external factors. They have been unhappy for so long, they literally don't know who they would be if they were happy. Happiness would require changing everything about how they relate to the world, and that radical shift is terrifying. The therapy culture has often exacerbated this, teaching women to pathologize everything, to see trauma everywhere, and to justify every complaint with psychological language. Instead of learning to take responsibility, the woman acquires a sophisticated vocabulary to blame her partner. He's emotionally unavailable. He gaslights her when he disagrees. He doesn't validate her feelings. The therapy that should help her take responsibility instead provides her with more sophisticated tools to blame the man. The solutions to female unhappiness are available, but they require a courage that few modern women exhibit. Genuine self-reflection, taking responsibility for one's own emotional state, lowering expectations to match reality, practicing gratitude for what is, and choosing meaning over temporary excitement. These aren't sexy solutions, they don't get validation on social media, but they are the only path to genuine peace. The hard truth is that it's easier to blame him than to examine oneself, easier to want more than to appreciate what is, and easier to complain than to take the difficult action required for personal growth. In a culture that constantly tells women they are perfect as they are, and that any unhappiness is someone else's fault, there is no external incentive to change. The impact of this chronic female dissatisfaction on men is nothing short of devastating. Good men spend years, often entire decades, trying to make these women happy, a futile effort rooted in their own biological drive to solve problems and provide. They sacrifice their own needs, their own happiness, and their own identity, desperately trying to fill a hole that cannot be filled from the outside. They develop anxiety, depression, and lose their confidence, transforming into a shell of a man who constantly apologizes for his own existence, walking on eggshells in his own home, afraid to breathe wrong. They operate under the futile belief that if they just try harder, do more, or be better, she will finally be happy. But the hardest truth a man must accept is the single idea that will save his sanity and his soul. You cannot make an unhappy woman happy. If she was unhappy before you, she will be unhappy with you and unhappy after you. Your presence, your efforts, your money, and your love cannot cure what is broken inside her. Only she can do that work, and for most, it is simply easier to blame you than to fix themselves. A man's survival requires a brutal but simple test to determine if he is wasting his life on a bottomless emotional pit. 1. Was she generally happy and fulfilled before you met her? 2. Does she take full, proactive responsibility for her own emotional state and actively seek solutions? 3. Does she practice gratitude regularly and have realistic, grounded expectations of life and partnership? 4. Does she focus more on what she has and what is right than what she lacks and what is wrong? If the answer to these questions is predominantly no, you are with someone who is chronically unhappy. Her dissatisfaction is not your fault, not your responsibility, and not within your power to fix. Understanding this doesn't solve her problem, but it frees you from the exhausting, futile, and destructive effort of trying to repair what you did not break and cannot mend. Her happiness is her responsibility, and until she takes that responsibility, she will remain unhappy, no matter what you do, who she's with, or what you have. This is why women are always unhappy, and recognizing this fact is the only way a man can regain his own self-respect and sanity.